aggressive assumption, I think, that peace is something you have to forcefully carve out of your day.
Oh, absolutely. Like it's a construction project.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're standing in the middle of a hurricane.
Right.
Emails are pinging, Slack notifications are just going off constantly, the news cycle is screaming at you, family obligations are piling up.
It's just the deafening chaos of modern life.
Right. And the default modern response is to think, well, if I can just build a strong enough shelter, if I can just time block my schedule perfectly or, subscribe to the right meditation app, I'll finally manufacture some peace.
Right. You isolate yourself for exactly 20 minutes every morning, and boom, you're peaceful.
Yeah. We view it as a defense mechanism against the world.
Which is, it essentially turns the pursuit of peace into yet another grueling task on your to-do list.
Oh, 100%. It's exhausting.
It is. I mean, the irony of the modern wellness and mindfulness industry is that the pursuit of peace often becomes this massive source of stress in itself.
Because you're failing at it constantly.
Exactly. Because it relies entirely on your own isolated effort. It depends on your ability to control an environment that, let's be entirely honest here, is completely uncontrollable.
Yeah, you can't control the hurricane.
No, you can't. We live in a world defined by turbulence and anxiety.
Yeah.
So your ability to micromanage that external noise down to zero, it's a complete illusion.
Which is just an incredibly exhausting way to live. You're constantly playing defense day in and day out.
Always on high alert.
Right. But today, we are actually tearing down that defense mechanism. We're doing a deep dive into a newly shared note on a really fascinating text.
Yeah, this one is pretty wild.
It really is. It's called the Book of Heaven, or in the original Vietnamese notes we have here, Saktinong.
Saktinog, right?
Yeah. And our mission today is to explore this radical, basically a 60-year experiment in giving up control entirely. Like, what if the ultimate mechanism for finding peace had absolutely nothing to do with building better boundaries?
Or, wrestling the steering wheel of your life into submission.
Exactly. What if you just let go?
And I think we should clarify right up front how we're approaching this today.
Yeah, good point.
We're looking at this source material objectively, really analyzing the psychological and spiritual framework it proposes.
Just laying out what the text actually says.
Right. Because what makes this particular framework so compelling to dissect is that it challenges the very foundation of how most people view personal conduct.
Whether they're religious or not.
Exactly. Whether you consider yourself deeply religious, vaguely spiritual, or entirely secular. The text forces us to ask this central, defining question. According to this philosophy, what is the ultimate, deepest intention for humanity?
Let's unpack that because the answer the source text provides is where we hit our first massive paradigm shift.
It's a huge shift.
Right. When most people think about religion or spirituality, their brain immediately defaults to like a compliance model.
Oh, sure. Following the rules.
Yeah, following the rules. You've got the 10 Commandments, the Eightfold Path, whatever moral laws a society holds up. It's a very binary system.
Do this, don't do that.
Exactly. Be a good person, don't steal, help your neighbor, pay your taxes.
Yeah, the compliance model basically operates on this idea that the universe, or, a divine creator, has set a specific standard of behavior.
Like a cosmic rule book.
Right. You're handed a rule book, and your job as a human being equipped with free will is to just conform to that standard.
So your spiritual success is measured by how accurately you adhere to those rules.
Exactly. It's a system of metrics. Did you score enough points today?
Right. But the text we're analyzing today, Sakhingang, it argues that this compliance model is, at best, just the absolute baseline.
It's like spiritual kindergarten.
Yeah, kindergarten.
Oh.
The source proposes that the divine intention isn't just to produce, well-behaved humans who follow the laws.
It's calling humanity to something much higher.
A much more integrated reality, yeah. The framework suggests it's not about obeying rules dictated from the outside. It's about living entirely merged within what the text calls the divine will, or in Vietnamese, Thana.
And that word merged is the critical concept we really need to dissect here.
Yeah, how does it define merged?
Well, the text makes a very sharp, deliberate differentiation between doing the divine will and living in it.
Doing versus living in, okay.
Right. Doing it still implies a fundamental separation.
Yeah.
There's you over here with your own human agenda, and there's the task you were assigned over there.
Like checking a box on a chore chart.
Exactly. You complete the task, you check the box, but you remain separate from the taskmaster.
Right.
But living in it implies a total synthesis, a complete dissolution of that boundary.
Okay, to make this concrete for everyone listening, let's look at a standard analogy for compliance and then see how this text just completely shatters it.
I love a good analogy.
So, think about driving a car. Following a moral law or a religious rule is like driving down the highway and strictly obeying the speed limit.
You stop at the red lights, you use your turn signals.
Right, you don't cut people off. You are in the driver's seat. You're the one burning the mental calories to make all the decisions, and you're simply restricting your actions based on the laws of the road.
So you're a highly compliant driver, sure.
Yeah.
But the effort, the fatigue, the potential for error, all of that is still sitting squarely on your shoulders. You're managing the machinery.
Right, you're doing all the work. Now, what this text is proposing with the concept of merging into the divine Wilton is something else entirely.
It's a totally different way to travel.
Yeah. In the context of that driving analogy, it's not about being a compliant driver. It's about taking your hands off the steering wheel entirely, sliding over to the passenger seat, and handing the keys over to the person who literally paved the road and engineered the car.
You're just letting them drive.
Exactly. You're still in the vehicle, you're still experiencing the forward motion, but the engine driving your actions is no longer your own restricted, exhausting effort.
That's a great way to picture it. Though I think we can actually push the mechanism a bit further to really capture what the text means by merging.
Oh, really? How so?
Think of it more like cloud computing.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Under the compliance model, you're processing every moral decision, every stressor on your own local hard drive.
Right, your little internal computer.
Yeah, and your mental RAM is limited. Your fan is spinning out of control, trying to keep up with the demands of daily life, and you're constantly at risk of crashing.
I feel like my fan is spinning out of control most days, to be honest.
Most of us do. So what the Book of Heaven proposes is akin to connecting your operating system entirely to the cloud.
So you're offloading the processing.
Exactly. You are still the interface. You're still the screen and the keyboard interacting with the physical world. But the heavy processing power, the ultimate source code dictating the responses, is happening on an infinite external server.
Your will and the divine server are perfectly synced.
Synced, yes.
I like that a lot better, actually. It significantly upgrades the concept because it explains the integration, right? It's not just the passivity of sitting in a passenger seat taking a nap.
No, you're actively functioning.
Yeah.
Just powered differently.
Right. And what we're going to see as we dig into the sources today is that this isn't just abstract, high-level theology that sounds nice on paper.
Right. It's very practical.
Yeah. This note introduces a meticulously recorded framework for how a person actually initiates that sync.
A framework that, surprisingly, emerged from an incredibly isolated, confined environment.
Yeah, which brings us to the source itself. Because to understand this concept of merging wills, we really have to look at where this framework originated.
We have to look at the messenger.
Exactly. The text introduces us to a woman named Louisa Piccarreta and this expansive body of work she produced over decades, which is known as the Book of Heaven.
And according to the source material, Louisa Piccarreta is referred to as a little soul and a servant of God.
Okay.
But her most crucial designation in this text, the role that defines her entire output, is that she was chosen as God's secretary for his divine will.
A secretary. That word carries a lot of weight there.
It really does.
It positions her not as a theologian crafting arguments or a philosopher building some complex worldview, but as a stenographer.
And the text is very explicit about this distinction, actually.
Is it?
Yeah, the Book of Heaven is deliberately categorized as not being a standard book of meditations.
So it's not just her own thoughts.
No. It isn't a devotional manual where someone sits at a desk and brainstorms inspiring thoughts about how to be a better person.
Gotcha.
It is presented as a literal, direct record of profound, intimate spiritual conversations between Jesus Christ and Louisa.
She is basically just taking dictation.
Exactly, taking dictation.
But before we get into the actual dictates of what she wrote down, we really have to address the elephant in the room regarding her life.
Yeah, her living situation.
Because the source highlights a detail that is incredibly jarring for a modern listener. Louisa spent over 60 years living a hidden, physically secluded life in Corrado, Italy.
Just astounding.
Over 6 decades confined to a room.
From the late 19th century all the way into the mid-20th century.
Think about that.
Right. While the outside world went through the Industrial Revolution, 2 world wars, the dawn of the atomic age, her physical reality was almost entirely static.
Okay, I have to jump in here with some heavy skepticism on behalf of anyone listening right now.
Go for it.
Because if you're listening to this while fighting through a brutal morning commute or, trying to manage a team of 20 people or juggling childcare with a mortgage,
The real world.
the real world, if you are trying to find a practical, functional path to peace in a chaotic, horizontal, loud, modern world, how can a woman who is hidden away in a single room in Italy for 60 years possibly relate to your daily grind?
It sounds like a total disconnect.
Right. To play devil's advocate, asceticism often feels like a cop-out.
Sure.
It's super easy to be perfectly peaceful and synced with the divine when you don't have a toxic boss screaming at you or a phone buzzing with bad news every 5 minutes.
You're not being tested by traffic.
Exactly. How does the text prove that this framework survives the messy reality of the real world and isn't just, the luxury of total isolation?
Well, that's the friction point of all mystical texts, isn't it? The paradox of asceticism.
Yeah.
But if we analyze the nature of her writings as described in the source, the text actually flips that criticism completely on its head.
How so?
When we look at physical isolation, we see limitation, right? We see someone cut off from the real world, fleeing from responsibility.
Hiding from life.
Exactly. But the framework presented here argues that the real world we are so obsessed with is mostly a distracting illusion.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So her physical isolation wasn't a retreat. It was the precise laboratory condition necessary for a massive, expansive internal exploration.
So it's like putting a subject in a sensory deprivation tank so you can finally measure their baseline brain waves, without the interference of neon signs and car alarms.
Precisely. Because she was forcefully stripped of the endless, trivial horizontal movements of daily society.
The politics, the social climbing.
The geographical travel, the gossip, all of it. Because she was stripped of that, she was able to focus entirely on mapping the vertical relationship.
The connection upwards.
Right. The 60-year conversation she recorded was an exploration of the deepest possible internal landscape of the human mind and soul.
I hear the sensory deprivation defense, I really do. But I still struggle with the translation to my life.
It's hard to bridge that gap.
It is, because I don't have a sensory deprivation tank. I have an open plan office.
Right. Well, think of it like deep-sea diving.
Okay.
The people who map the Mariana Trench aren't doing it so that everyone else has to move to the bottom of the ocean.
That would be terrible.
Right. They map the extreme, crushing depths so that humanity understands the full topography of the planet.
Oh, I see.
Louisa went into the absolute extreme of internal isolation to map the psychological and spiritual mechanics of surrender.
She went to the depths.
Yes, she did the grueling, decades-long work of navigating that internal abyss so that the resulting framework, the blueprint, could be handed to people living in the chaos.
Ah, okay.
You don't have to spend 60 years in a room, because she already did the heavy lifting of charting the territory for you.
Okay, that reframes it completely. She's essentially the test pilot for a psychological state.
A very apt description.
And because she acted as this dedicated secretary in that stillness, the text claims she recorded 3 vital lessons, 3 pillars of living in the divine will, designed to be exported out of her room and into our open plan offices and traffic jams. So, if she spent 60 years mapping this, what is the actual topography? Let's look at the first major claim of the text.
So the first pillar, the source outlines, is the concept of letting the divine act instead of oneself.
Letting God act instead of you.
Right. It's the practical application of intertwining the wills. The text describes the process of taking human free will, which, interestingly, the source notes was created out of pure love, not as a trap, and actively placing it into the eternal will.
But the word intertwining implies a partnership, right? While letting God act instead of oneself implies replacement.
Sounds like a contradiction.
Yeah, how does the text resolve that? Does this framework demand the destruction of human identity?
The source material is very careful to make a distinction here. It is not the destruction or suppression of the human will.
Okay.
If a more powerful force coerces you or overrides your brain, your will is dominated. That's a hostage situation.
Right, that's mind control.
Exactly. This text describes a radical invitation. The human will, utilizing its ultimate capacity for free choice, actively decides to yield.
It chooses to step back.
Yes, it's a continuous, conscious intertwining.
But we need to demand the how here. What is the actual mechanism of action?
The practical steps.
Right. Because it's one thing to philosophically say, I am intertwining my will with the eternal, while sitting quietly on a yoga mat.
Oh, that's easy.
It's another thing entirely to actually execute that mental shift on a Tuesday morning when you've just spilled scalding coffee on your laptop and you're late for a presentation.
Real-world application.
Yes. How do I actually yield in that moment? According to this framework, is it a mantra?
Yep.
A visualization technique?
The text actually focuses on the internal disposition, scaling the concept way down to micro moments.
Micro-mo.
Yeah. It doesn't prescribe a magic spell or a 3-step breathing technique. Instead, it demands a fundamental shift in how you view the ownership of an action.
Okay, what does that look like?
Well, the text gives very radical, specific examples. Think about it. We usually think that demonstrating our spiritual worth or achieving goodness requires macro-level moral decisions.
Like donating a kidney.
Right. Donating a kidney, giving away half your salary, standing up to a political tyrant.
The grand heroic acts, the measurable metrics of compliance religion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the text states that when the wills are merged, when that internal disposition of surrender is maintained, the scale of the external action completely ceases to matter.
The scale doesn't matter.
Not at all. The framework argues that every single heartbeat, every breath, and the most mundane, invisible daily tasks are transformed into words of praise and cosmic significance.
Let's pause on that claim because it is staggering.
It really is.
Every single heartbeat.
According to the logic of the Book of Heaven, yes.
Wow.
If your will is completely yielded, if you have mentally handed over the processing power to the cloud, using our earlier analogy, then your life force itself is recontextualized.
So even the involuntary stuff.
Right. The beating of your heart, the drawing of breath into your lungs, the sweeping of a floor is no longer just a biological function or a chore.
What is it then?
It is an act of the divine operating within your physical form. Therefore, a single breath becomes a perfect act of divine operation.
The psychological implications of that are massive.
Enormous.
If a single breath or a heartbeat is inherently infused with infinite value simply by the yielding of one's will, it completely dismantles the modern pressure to constantly perform.
It shatters the entire economy of spiritual and moral productivity.
Yes, because in the modern world, we've infected even our spirituality with capitalism, haven't we?
We absolutely have.
We think we have to produce measurable spiritual results to justify our existence. I have to log 50 hours of meditation on my app. I have to read a certain number of enlightened books.
You have to volunteer at the soup kitchen enough time.
Right, to fill up my spiritual punch card so the universe knows I'm a good person.
It's exhausting.
We are exhausted by the need to prove our worth through action. But this text is arguing that the most ordinary, involuntary biological function, just staying alive, just breathing, has infinite value if the internal disposition is surrendered.
The ordinary doesn't just become acceptable, it becomes extraordinary.
Under this framework, think about what happens to the hierarchy of human importance.
It completely flattens it.
It does. A billionaire philanthropist running a massive foundation, making huge, world-altering decisions every day, is doing no more and no less to participate in ultimate goodness than someone who is bedridden in a hospital, entirely incapacitated, doing nothing but breathing.
Provided both have merged their will with the divine, yes, the value of their existence is identical.
That is incredibly subversive. It strips away all the ego and the status we attach to doing good works.
Because you aren't the one generating the goodness anyway.
Exactly. You're just the conduit allowing it to flow through your basic existence. It makes you realize how much psychological energy we waste agonizing over whether we're doing enough with our lives or whether we have a big enough impact.
But that raises a really profound psychological question, which actually bridges us to the second pillar of this teaching.
Okay, let's go there.
If I am giving up ownership of my actions, if even my heartbeat isn't fully mine anymore, but a divine operation, don't I lose my identity?
That's the fear.
Right. Don't I lose my freedom? The modern mind hears, surrender your will, and immediately thinks of captivity.
Exactly. It sounds terrifying. It sounds like becoming an automaton, a robot.
Which is why the second pillar fundamentally addresses how this framework changes the internal emotional state.
Okay.
The source text refers to this second lesson as total inner renewal, and it explicitly claims that the goal of this surrender is to achieve the true freedom of the children of God.
We really need to drill down into their definition of freedom here.
Because it's not our definition.
No, it seems entirely contradictory to how we use the word today.
It is entirely contradictory. In our modern secular context, freedom is defined almost exclusively as autonomy.
Having choices.
Right. Autonomy means having the maximum possible number of choices available to you. and possessing the uninhibited power to choose any of them without restriction.
I am free because I can live wherever I want, buy whatever I want, be whatever I want.
The freedom of infinite options. The freedom to be the absolute master of your own destiny.
But the Book of Heaven operates on a completely different paradigm, doesn't it?
Completely different. It defines this true freedom as a specific state of being where all anxieties, limits, and fears melt away in boundless love.
Boundless love, which the Vietnamese note translates as Tin Yu Ha Ha, right?
Yes, Tinyu Haha.
So it's contrasting secular autonomy with psychological liberation.
The text implicitly argues that human autonomy, the freedom to be the master of your own universe, is actually a psychological trap.
A trap. How?
Because human limits are inherently defined by fear, worry, uncertainty, and a lack of foresight. When you demand to be the one driving the car, you are taking on the responsibility for every potential crash.
Oh, man.
You are paralyzed by the pressure of navigating the infinite options, terrified of making the wrong choice and ruining your life.
I see the distinction. Secular freedom is the freedom to do whatever you want. The freedom this text is proposing is freedom from the paralyzing limits of the human condition.
Exactly. Freedom from your own anxiety.
It's freedom from the tyranny of consequence.
That's a great way to put it.
If you truly deeply believe that you have merged your operating system with an eternal divine will that operates purely on boundless love and perfect foresight, then what is there to fear?
Nothing. Because the outcome of your life is no longer entirely resting on your fragile, limited shoulders.
Right. True freedom in this context is the absolute absence of existential worry.
And the text calls it the freedom of the children of God.
Which reminds me of, think about the psychology of a toddler walking through a busy international airport with a loving parent.
Oh, this is a perfect analogy. Let's hear it.
Okay, so the parent is dealing with a massive cognitive load, right? Checking the departure screens, worrying about whether the bags are overweight, holding the passports, doing the math on time zones.
Sweating the details.
Exactly. The parent has total autonomy, but they are highly stressed.
And what is the psychological state of the toddler?
Well, the toddler is utterly oblivious to the mechanics of the journey. They aren't stressed about making the connection. They don't care if the plane is delayed.
They're just eating snacks.
Right. They have completely surrendered their autonomy. They can't choose what gate to go to. They can't buy their own food. But in exchange for that surrender, they have gained absolute freedom from anxiety.
Total peace.
Yes. They are free to just marvel at the airplanes out the window or play with a toy because they have total, unwavering trust that the parent has the logistics handled.
That analogy perfectly encapsulates the framework's proposition.
The toddler traded autonomy for peace.
Yes. And the source text is arguing that as modern adults, we cling so desperately to our illusion of autonomy that we willingly accept the crushing, unbearable weight of anxiety that comes with it.
We insist on carrying the passports and navigating the terminal of life entirely alone.
And we're having a collective nervous breakdown because of it.
We want to be the pilot, even though we don't know how to fly the plane.
So the second pillar is the antidote to that specific modern exhaustion. The inner renewal happens the moment you realize you don't have to carry the weight of the world, because you aren't the one keeping the world spinning.
Okay, so if I adopt this, I'm free from anxiety and my mundane actions are elevated.
Right.
But frankly, that sounds a bit like spiritual narcissism.
Narcissism.
Yeah, it's very self-contained. It's all about my peace and my heartbeat. Does this framework have any utility for the rest of humanity, or is it just a tool for personal psychological comfort?
That is a very valid question. But the source text absolutely does not let the framework stop at the boundaries of the self.
Okay, where does it go?
The third pillar is where the internal sink aggressively expands outward into a massive external impact.
The external impact.
Yes. The third teaching from the Book of Heaven asserts that by merging wills, a person becomes a source of salvation for others.
How? Because again, this text originated from a woman who didn't leave her room for 60 years.
Right, physically isolated.
She wasn't out there building hospitals or feeding the poor. How does yielding your will in private become a source of salvation for anyone else?
It ties directly back to the elevation of the mundane from the first pillar, but introduces the concept of metaphysical intercession.
Metaphysical intercession.
Right. The text claims that small daily pains, minor annoyances, small joys, and entirely normal daily activities can be spiritually combined with the redemptive passion of Christ.
The arithmetic of this intercession in the source material is wild, by the way.
It really is.
It states that these tiny, seemingly invisible daily acts, if endured or performed within the divine will, ripple out to intercede for millions of souls. Millions.
The scale is astronomical.
Yeah.
And it requires a massive shift in how we view cause and effect.
Yeah,
It's essentially applying chaos theory to the spiritual realm.
right. The butterfly effect.
Exactly.
In physics, it's the concept of sensitive dependence on initial conditions. The idea that a butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon rainforest creates a tiny change in air pressure,
Which cascades and compounds through the atmosphere.
until it eventually influences the path of a tornado in Texas. Small, localized actions creating massive, unpredictable, global ripples.
The text is applying that exact dynamic to metaphysics.
Okay.
Just as a small pebble creates ripples across an entire pond, the framework argues that human suffering and human action are part of a deeply connected spiritual ecosystem.
We're all connected.
Right. Enduring a migraine or doing a repetitive chore or holding back an angry remark, if done with a will entirely synced with the divine, is not an isolated event.
It's not just you suffering in a vacuum.
No, it ripples out across the spiritual landscape to provide grace or strength or assistance to millions of people you will never even meet.
I really want the listener to stop and run their own life through this specific filter for a second.
Please do.
Think about the things that frustrate you the most on a daily basis, the things that just feel like friction.
A brutal commute where you're stuck in gridlock traffic for an hour.
Yes. Or a tedious data entry task at work, a chronic ache in your lower back. Usually, our default human response is to just suffer through those things with deep irritation and resentment.
We view them as wasted time.
Meaningless static in our day.
In the standard human operating system, they're purely negative experiences. They drain your battery and offer zero return on investment.
But if you actually adopt the mindset outlined in this third pillar, the entire context of your suffering is flipped upside down.
Completely inverted.
What if sitting in that bumper-to-bumper traffic jam, instead of being a source of rising blood pressure and road rage, became an active mechanism for universal good?
It's hard to even fathom.
What if you truly believed that simply enduring that annoyance with a yielded, patient will was somehow, in a metaphysical way you can't see, providing spiritual oxygen to people struggling in a war zone?
Or giving someone on the other side of the planet the exact brace they need to not give up today.
What you're describing is the ultimate purpose-making machine.
It really is.
And we know from modern psychology, specifically the work of people like Viktor Frankl, that human beings can endure almost any amount of suffering if they can attach meaning to it.
Right, meaning makes it bearable.
Meaningless suffering destroys the psyche. Purposeful suffering can be endured with profound dignity.
Exactly. It's a radical reframing of reality.
Yeah.
The text is offering a framework where absolutely nothing is wasted.
Nothing.
No stubbed toe, no sleepless night, no moment of boredom at a bus stop is without immense universal utility, provided the will is united with the divine.
It takes the most invisible, seemingly insignificant person.
Someone who feels like they have no power or influence in the world.
Right, and turns them into a hidden titan holding up the fabric of humanity.
Which brings us to the ultimate crescendo of this text.
The big question.
Why are these three pillars, surrendering the action, finding freedom from anxiety, and elevating the mundane into cosmic intercession, so critically important right now?
Yeah, why now?
The source explicitly points out that this teaching is not just old theology, it is a special gift for today.
It frames this as a specific, targeted intervention for the contemporary world.
An intervention, exactly.
And it makes the boldest claim yet. It categorizes the state of living in the divine will as the absolute highest peak of all graces God has for humanity.
Not just a nice devotion.
No. The pinnacle of human existence.
And it anchors that claim by describing the ultimate theological goal of this practice. The text states that this framework is designed to restore humanity to its original purity, exactly as it was in the Garden of Eden.
Now, we need to be careful with the word Eden here.
Definitely.
Because for a lot of people, that instantly conjures up Sunday school images of a literal garden, fruit trees, a talking snake, and a historical origin story.
Right, a very literal reading.
But based on everything we've unpacked today about psychology and the will, how is this text using the concept of Eden?
It requires us to view Eden not as a set of geographical coordinates, but as a baseline state of being.
A state of being.
Eden represents the original psychological and spiritual condition of humanity before the introduction of friction.
The pre-crash operating system.
Exactly, the pre-crash OS. When you look at the theological tradition this text builds upon, when humanity was in Eden, they didn't have a massive binder of heavy rules to follow to please the divine.
There were no 10 Commandments yet.
There was no compliance model because there was no separation. Their very existence, breathing, walking, tending to the garden, sleeping, was a natural, effortless extension of the divine will.
They were already fully synced to the cloud. There was no lag.
The separation, the assertion of human autonomy against the divine server, the demand to be the pilot, is what shattered that sync.
And that separation is what introduced the anxiety, the friction, and the need for a rule book.
Exactly. So when the text says this practice restores humanity to Eden, it's saying it offers a pathway back to that original frictionless state of perfect union.
It completely bypasses the thousands of years of heavy, guilt-ridden, rule-based religious structure and returns directly to the source.
And the source material heavily emphasizes that distinction, actually. It goes out of its way to clarify to the reader that adopting the framework of the Book of Heaven is not about taking on a new, heavy burden of religious obligations.
It's not just more rules.
No, it's not adding another set of laws to your already exhausted life. The phrasing the text uses is beautiful. It frames this as an embrace, a warm gift.
It's presented as an invitation into a loving heart, offering to transform you and guide you step by step.
The text seems acutely aware of how burnt out people are by the endless demands of compliance-based living, both secular and religious.
We're so burnt out.
It deliberately positions this framework as the antidote to that exhaustion.
It's fundamentally saying, you don't need to try harder to be good. You need to stop trying to generate the goodness entirely on your own.
Which is, ironically, the most difficult, counterintuitive thing you can ask a modern human being to do.
Why is that?
Because we are addicted to our own effort. Surrendering the illusion of control feels like dying to the ego.
It really does. And that brings us to the final call to action presented in the source text.
The practical takeaway.
Yes. It summarizes the invitation for the reader and, by extension, for you listening right now. It says, if you are feeling bone-tired on your faith journey, or if you're completely secular but simply thirsty for a deeper meaning to your life's friction, the response required to initiate this sync is shockingly simple.
Shockingly simple. It doesn't ask you to quit your job.
No.
It doesn't ask you to abandon your family, move to Corato, Italy, and lock yourself in a room for 60 years.
Right. It asks for a small internal pivot, a simple prayer, an open heart, and the willingness to receive this legacy.
Just an openness.
And the text closes with a very specific, incredibly powerful phrase in the notes here. Fiat. Sinchotan chu dictaton advention dat kungyat.
Fiat. Let God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We really cannot overstate the importance of that word, fiat.
It's central to everything we've talked about.
It is the linchpin of this entire philosophical and spiritual framework. It's a Latin term that basically translates to let it be done.
It's the ultimate declaration of surrender. But as we've discussed, we have to understand the psychology behind it.
Right. It's not a passive, defeated giving up.
It's not saying whatever happens, happens in a nihilistic way.
No, it's an active, deeply intentional, courageous yielding. It is the conscious decision of the ego to step aside.
It is the toddler actively choosing to stop grabbing at the steering wheel of the airplane.
Yes. It is the definitive moment of connection to the cloud.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the staggering claims of the Book of Heaven, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Something to take with you today.
Building on the profound implications of everything we've just unpacked. If there is even a fraction of truth to what this text claims,
Just a fraction.
if the ultimate peace in this loud, chaotic world doesn't come from finally organizing your schedule or building better defenses or wrestling absolute control over your life, but rather by entirely yielding your will so that even your own heartbeat isn't fully yours anymore.
What is the very first thing you would have to let go of today to test that theory?
Think about the one area of your life right now where your hands are gripping the steering wheel the absolute tightest.
The situation causing you the most sleepless nights and the most anxiety.
What would it actually look like in that specific messy reality to look at it, say, fiat, step back, and let the architect drive?